be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. A lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he said, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" Jesus said to him, "What is written in the law? What do you read there?" The lawyer answered, "You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus said to him, "You have given the right answer. Do this, and you will live." But wanting to justify himself, the lawyer asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" Jesus replied, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell into the hands of robbers, who stripped him, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. Now, by chance, a priest was going down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. So likewise, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, while traveling, came near him, and when he saw him, he was moved with pity. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, having poured oil and wine on them. Then he put him on his own animal and brought him to an inn and took care of him. The next day the Samaritan took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said, "Take care of him, and when I get back, I will repay you whatever more you spend." Jesus asked, "Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers?" The lawyer said, "The one who showed him mercy." Jesus said to him, "Go and do likewise." The Gospel of the Lord.
Last night when I was here, it was very warm, and it made sense that I shortened my homily. Today it's not as warm. We'll leave it at that. We're hearing this parable today, one that we're all very familiar with. And as I was reflecting on our gospel story today, I thought sort of 2 components there that struck me a little bit to say maybe we need to reflect a little bit more about that. The first is the robbers. We look at this strip of road between Jerusalem and Jericho. It was a very dangerous road. It's very easy for the thieves to take advantage of travelers. And as I was reflecting on how these thieves were working, I thought, maybe we're like that sometimes too. What is that road to Jerusalem, to Jericho in our lives? Or perhaps that's a road that passes through our home, through our parish, through our schools, through our workplaces. The road to Jericho is any place where people are being robbed of their dignity, their material goods, or their value as a human being. It is any place where there is suffering and oppression. Though that Jericho road could be, as I said, in our homes, the place where we are taking care of our mother or father, our husband or our wife, or even our own children. We may find our spouse, children, or parents lying wounded by our bitter words, by our criticism and sarcasm, and many other forms, perhaps, of verbal, emotional, or physical abuse. So maybe that's one area that we need to be reflecting upon. How does my life reflect the lives of the robbers, especially to those around me? And then the second aspect is looking at the man who was beaten. There's a cartoon I came across some time ago of Garfield, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with Garfield, the cat. There he was sitting in a comfortable chair, and he sees his friend Odie, the dog, at the window outside, peering into the house eagerly. Garfield says to himself, "Oh, poor Odie, locked outside in the cold. I just can't bear to see him like this. I have to do something." At this point, Garfield gets up from his comfortable chair and closes the curtains. How many times do we do that? Do we close the curtains when we see someone who is in need around us? Are we good neighbors? Or do we try to block that out? The lawyer asks, "Who is my neighbor?" Which reveals that really, in some respects, the lawyer was very self-centered. He only wanted to have to deal with that little group that was defined as a neighbor. And as we listen to the parable, Jesus never answers that question. He never says, "Who is his neighbor?" Instead, Jesus teaches how to be neighborly. There are no limits to being a neighbor. There are no limits to who is our neighbor. And that's where we have to really look at that in our own lives and to see whomever is that beaten person on the side of the road is our neighbor. Maybe that's where we need to, another aspect that we can reflect upon. How have we been a neighbor this past week? To whom have we behaved in a neighborly kind of way? This parable is a condemnation of non-involvement, as well as an invitation to be merciful and to be kind to those in need, wherever we may find them. Again, whether it's in our homes, whether it's our workplaces, walking down the street, whether it's in our parish. Now look at what happened here today. At each of the doors, there was somebody greeting you, wasn't there? With a smile. Or at least the couple people that I checked out, yes, they smiled. Doesn't that make a difference? And if they didn't smile, please let me know because I'll have to talk to them. But, just that little smile can make a difference. When you're coming to the door, in particular of a church, place of worship, our family spiritual home, we should feel welcomed. We should feel a joy when we come here. That smile is so important, a cheery greeting. I was listening to some of the conversations. I don't know anybody yet. It's going to take me a while to do that. But I could hear how people knew one another, and they were asking about, well, what about? And this and that. That's what we're supposed to be about. Being family, knowing one another, sharing one another's lives, giving words of appreciation. Thank you, everyone, for coming today. Maybe you didn't know that I was coming, and you said, okay, well, if I would have known Father Matt was coming, maybe I would have done something different. But no, you're here, so thank you for coming. It's so hard to celebrate Mass all alone. You're here, and how great is that? Do we show appreciation to our brothers and sisters, our husbands and wives if we're married? Do we give thanks for the things that they do for us? It's so easy to take others for granted. We leave them beaten on the side of the road. And those little words of encouragement can be so important. That's being neighborly, acknowledging one another, being joyful with one another. And to be careful that we don't automatically jump to conclusions. It's an interesting other little story that I came across. This rabbi tells a story about an old Jewish man standing on a crowded bus. There was a young man standing next to him and asked him, "What time is it?" The old man refused to reply. So the young man moved on. The old man's friend, sensing something was wrong, asked, "Why were you so discourteous to the young man asking for the time?" The old man answered, "If I had given him the time of day, next he would have wanted to know where I'm going. Then we might talk about our interests, and if we did that, he might invite himself to my house for dinner. And if he did that, he would meet my lovely daughter. If he met her, then they both may fall in love, and I didn't want my daughter marrying someone who can't afford a watch." Now we say, well, that seems like a kind of a silly story. What conclusions this man was jumping to just by somebody asking, "What time is it?" But how many times do we do that in our own lives, where we jump to conclusions? We prejudge someone by how they look or from where they might be from. And we prejudge the intentions in someone's hearts. Therefore, do we refuse to respond because we already know what the conclusion of the story is? Just as this old man, he really didn't know that that's how the story was going to go, but he jumped to that conclusion. He was not being neighborly. The young man was only asking for the time. Maybe that's, again, what we need to be looking at, in our own lives. How are we being neighborly? What are the needs around us? Some might need our funds. We need to donate somewhere. But more importantly, more often, we need to be neighborly with our time, with our compassion, perhaps even with our advice, to help people get back on the road again, to get them on their way. The needs are many of those who cross our path. The way to holiness, the road to eternal life, is outside our door. We can't stay hidden inside. We need to look at our lives and see, are we being robbers? Another question, how are we being neighborly? Two different questions, two different things that we need to bring to our reflection. Because unlike the lawyer, who is my neighbor is not the question. The question is, how have I been a neighbor today? The person is our neighbor in God's sight. And if God sees them as a neighbor, so should we.